Good evening, everyone. In the last session, we developed first web application by using Spring Web MVC. We understood what is dispatcher servlet. We understood what is a handler mapper, what is controller, what is model and view, what is view resolver and view component, and how to send a request to the web application and how it is getting executed. That part we have seen yesterday. We developed multiple controllers and multiple methods in the controller as well. Anybody facing any problem in the application development, first web application development? Anybody facing any problem in the first web application development?
No, sir.
All of you able to do that? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So can you tell me what is the default embedded server we are getting in the Spring Web MVC?
Tomcat.
Tomcat we are getting as a default embedded server. What is the default port number for the Tomcat?
8080.
8080.
So 8080 is the default port number that we are getting for the embedded server, right? So can we change the Tomcat port number?
Yes.
And where we can do
Yes.
that change?
Properties file.
Yeah, so we can change that embedded
In
server port
properties
number
file.
by using
Yeah.
properties
Server.port.
file, by using server dot port number. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you guys tell me what is the context path? Can you guys tell me what is the context path in the application?
Yeah. URL pattern.
In the application. URL pattern is different, context path is
Content.
different.
Yeah, it's a
My
project
question is,
application.
What is the context path?
Project application.
What is the context path? That is my question. What is context path?
It shows the controller what is the use of server port.
Project name
Project
is
application
called
path.
as context path. Okay, so name of the project name we can consider project name. We can use as context path. We can use as context path. In the Spring Boot, by default, context path will be available or context path will not be available.
Will not be available.
In the Spring Boot, by default, context path will not be available. Do you guys know how to configure context path in the Spring Boot?
Yeah, properties
How
file.
to configure context path in the Spring Boot?
Yeah, server dot context.
Yeah, servlet.context path. So by default, context path will be empty in the Spring Boot. If you want, you can configure the context path. When you configure context path in the Spring Boot, then specifying that context path in the URL is mandatory. By default, for the Spring Boot applications, context path will not be available. Either server port number or context path, view resolver, we are going to configure in the application properties file. Instead of application properties file, you can use application.yml file also, right? So can you tell me what is a view resolver and how to configure view resolver in the Spring Boot?
Yeah, it is the path of the file where we will configure it in the application.properties suffix and
Yes.
prefix.
View resolver is used to specify where our presentation files are available in the project. Controller will return the data in the form of model and view. Model represents data in the form of key value. View represents logical file name. So now, what are the properties we are using to configure view resolver? Spring.mvc.view.prefix. Spring.mvc.view.prefix is equal to /views. /views is a folder in which I created JSP file. Instead of /views, you can use any name for that. And I'm using presentation technology as a JSP. Spring.mvc.view.suffix is equal to .jsp. Like this, we can configure view resolver in the Spring Boot application. View resolver is used to identify physical location of the view files and extension of the view file. Then we can change the server port number by using server.port is equal to 9090. The default Tomcat server, whenever you add the web starter, by default we are getting Tomcat as an embedded server. The Tomcat server will use 8080 as a default port number. If you don't want to use that port number, you can change that port number by using server.port 9090. By default, context path will not be available for the Spring Boot application. If you want, you can configure server.servlet.context path. Okay, so you can configure context path like this. Suppose I am configuring my context path as a web app, right? So if you want to configure the context path, you need to write this property in the application.properties file. We are configuring view resolver, we are configuring port number, and we are configuring context path also, right? So with this, we understood what is Spring Web MVC and what is dispatcher servlet. So dispatcher servlet is a predefined servlet class. It is acting as a front controller in the Spring Web MVC. Every request will be received by dispatcher servlet. Then dispatcher servlet will talk to handler mapper. Handler mapper is responsible to identify which will be processed by which controller. Based on the URL pattern, handler mapper is going to identify the controller and the controller method. Then dispatcher servlet is going to call the controller method. So to represent Java class as a controller, we are using @controller annotation. Inside that controller, we are writing the methods. Like the methods are binded to HTTP request. Now, controller will process the request and the controller will return the data in the form of model and view object. Model represents data in the form of key value. View represents logical file name. Then here, once model and view is completed, then view resolver comes into picture. View resolver is used to identify where the view file is available in the project. Once view resolver identified that, then view component comes into picture. It is used to render model data. So like this, we can work with web application development by using Spring Web MVC. In order to develop the web application by using Spring Web MVC in the Spring Boot, we are adding web starter. So web starter dependency is very important in the Spring Boot to develop web application. So if you add the web starter, it will provide all the support to develop the web application. Dispatcher servlet, handler mapper, view resolver, embedded server, everything will come as part of that web starter dependency only. Okay. Understood how to develop a web application with multiple controllers and how to develop multiple methods also, and how to access those methods by sending the request. Now here, generally guys, web application development means client will send the data to the server and the server will send the data to the client. Client will send the data to the server and server will send the data to the client. So sending the data from UI to server, server to UI. That is what we need to understand. Now first here, let's talk about how to send the to client and client to server. So here, client can send the data to the server in below 3 ways. Client can send data to server in below 3 ways. Okay. First one is by using query parameters. Second one is by using path parameters. And the third one is by using request body. So whenever we are sending a request to the server, we are going to act as a client. So how client can send the data to the server? Client can send data to server in 3 ways. One is by using query parameter. Second one is by using path parameters. Third one is by using request body. So let's understand what is query parameter, what is path parameter, and what is request body. Are you guys able to follow me? How many ways client can send the data to server? Guys, how many ways?
Yes, 3 ways.
Yeah, in 3 ways, client can send the data to server. One is by using query parameter. Second one is by using path parameters. Third one is by using request body. So first let's talk about query parameters. So what is query parameters? Query parameters are also called as request parameters. Query parameters are also called as request parameters. Okay. Query parameters will represent data in the key value format. Query parameters will represent the data in key value format. Key value format. Parameters always will present at the end of the URL. Query parameters should present only at the end of the URL. Query parameters should present only at end of the URL. At the end of the URL. Query parameters will start with question mark. Query parameters will start with question mark. Okay. Query parameters will be separated by and symbol. Query parameters will be separated by and symbol. Right. So now, if a client want to send the data to the server in the URL, then you can go for query parameters. Query parameters are also called as request parameters. These query parameters will represent the data in the key value format. Query parameters should present only at end of the URL. We can't keep the query parameters in the middle of the URL. Query parameters should present only at the end of the URL. Query parameters will start with a question mark and they will be separated by and symbol. For example, if you go to YouTube, whenever you try to watch one video in the YouTube, the URL will be prepared like this: www.youtube.com/watch www.youtube.com/watch V is equal to, every video in the YouTube will have one ID. So V is equal to ID. Here V is a key and that value is a ID. So let's go to YouTube. Let's go to YouTube and let's try to observe that. Now I'm going to YouTube. So there are so many videos available in our YouTube channel. Now, what is Java? There is a video available. Now, when I click on that video, can you see the URL? How the URL got changed in the YouTube? How the URL got changed in the YouTube? youtube.com/watch. Up to /watch, that is the URL pattern. After watch, question mark is available. The question mark represents starting point of the query parameter. V is a key is equal to some value. So like this, if you want to send the data from client to server in the URL, then we can go for query parameters. Query parameters are also called as request parameters. This is example 1. So in the YouTube, so many videos are available. If you want to watch particular video in the YouTube, then you can click on that video link. When you click on that video link, that video ID will go to the YouTube server as a query parameter. Similarly, www.ashokit.in course is equal to SBMS and trainer is equal to Ashok. So like this, I want to send a request to our website with a course name and a trainer name to identify price of the course. Now here, if you observe www.ashokit.in, that is the website URL. At the end, I am writing a question mark. What is the meaning of this question mark? This question mark represents, it is the starting point of the query parameter. And here, if you observe, course is equal to SBMS. Here, course is the key, SBMS is the value. And I want to send multiple query parameters to the server. To send multiple query parameters to the server, we are using AND as a separator. Course is equal to SBMS. This is one query parameter. And trainer is equal to Ashok. This is another query parameter. Like this, we can send multiple query parameters to the server in the URL. That means if a client want to send any data to the server, client can send the data to the server in the URL. That is a query parameter, key value pair. To read query parameters from the URL, we will use request param annotation in the Spring controller. To read query parameters in the Spring controller, we will use @request param annotation. To read query parameters in the Spring controller, we will use @request param annotation. So if client want to send some data to the server in the URL, then we are going to use query parameters. So what is query parameter? Query parameters are used to represent data in the key value format. Query parameters should present only at end of the URL. Query parameters will start with question mark symbol. Query parameters will be separated by and symbol. Now you see YouTube is using query parameters to play the video. Now for our website, you can send the details in the URL to get the course data. So how? Server side Spring controller will read the query parameters. Client is going to send the request. In that request, client will send some data in the URL. How my Spring controller will read the data from the URL? Client is sending the data as a query parameter. In the URL, client is sending the data. How Spring controller will read this data? To read the query parameters, Spring controller will use one annotation called @request param annotation. By using request param annotation, we can read query parameters in the Spring controller. Okay. Similar to the query parameters, we are having one more concept that is called path parameters. Path parameters. If a client want to send the data to the server in the URL, client can go for query parameters or client can go for path parameters. So what is path parameter? Path parameters are also called as URI parameters. URI parameters. Path parameters are also called as URI parameters. Are you guys clear with my point? Path parameters are also called as URI parameters. Now, parameters will represent data in the key value format. Query parameters are used to send the data to server in the URL. Query parameters are used to send data from client to server in URL. Same thing, parameters also used to send the data from client to server in the URL. Path parameters are used to send data from client to server in URL. By using query parameters, send the data to the server in the URL. By using path parameter also, we can send the data to server in the URL. Path parameters are also called as URI parameters. Path parameters will represent data directly without parameters in form of key value, whereas path parameters will represent the data directly. Path parameters will represent the data directly. Path parameters will represent data directly without keys. How path brace represents variable, and here trainer name. Like this, we are going to specify in the URL. Like this, we are going to specify path parameters in the URL. Are you guys getting my point? Query parameters will represent the data in the form of key value, whereas path parameters will represent the data directly. Path parameters are used to send the data from client to Yeah, guys, all of you, can you hear me? All of you, can you hear my voice now? Is my voice audible now? Path parameters. Understand path parameters. Path parameters are used to send the data from client to server in the URL. Path parameters are also called URL parameters. Path parameters will represent the data directly without www.ashokari.in/course. This is URL pattern. This is in the flower brackets. I have written C name, right? This is a course name. This is represented as a path parameter. And here trainer is a URL pattern and T name is a path parameter. Query parameters will be available in the form of key value, whereas path parameters will be available directly in the URL without keys. Both are used to send the data from client to server. Query parameters and path parameters both are used to send the data from client to server. Guys, is my voice breaking? Voice is breaking now. Not understandable. Huh? Yeah, guys, I'm at hometown. So tomorrow I'm coming to Hyderabad. So I'm having the issue. If voice is breaking continuously, if not able to understand, then I need to stop and I need to take tomorrow. Some people are saying it is clear. Some people are saying it is breaking. Okay, then guys, I will stop it for today. People are saying that they are not able to understand. Voice issue. Okay, then I will take your doubts for today. I will stop the concept because some people are not able to hear my voice. Yeah, please go ahead with your questions, guys.
Sorry, the path parameters you have said, yeah, URL pattern is there. I just want to understand that one point.
Yes, sir. Whenever we are writing a path parameter in the URL pattern, you need to represent in this URL in which position path parameter will come, that we need to represent like a template like this.
So URL pattern is to only up to course, or again it will again trainer
No,
also?
up to course it is a URL pattern. C name is a path parameter. Trainer is also a URL pattern. T name is a path param. So path parameters can present anywhere in the URL. When you go for query parameters will start with the question mark. They will present only at the end of the URL. But to improve the readability of the URL pattern, path parameters you can use anywhere in the URL.
Okay.
Here C name is one path parameter, T name is one path parameter.
Okay. Okay. So in the URL pattern, like in a method, if you give /course/trainer, will it take C name and T name?
Yep. Whenever you are writing the URL pattern at the method, you need to represent the URL pattern like this. So once I develop the program, I will show you the syntax.
Okay, got it. Right. Sir.
Sir, path param and path variable both are same.
Query parameters, path parameters, both are used to send the data from client to server in the URL only. Okay.
Sir, when do we use query parameter? When do we use path parameter, sir?
Yeah, I will come to that point, sir. First, understand. So now I'm a client. I'm using YouTube. So in the YouTube, there are so many videos are available. I want to play a particular video. How YouTube will understand that which video I want to play? So when I click on particular video, every video will have a ID in the YouTube. Whenever we upload a video in the YouTube, it will have an ID. So when I click on that video link, now you see the YouTube UI is sending that video ID to the YouTube server as a path parameter. So youtube.com/watch V. V is the key equals to this is the video ID. So based on that ID, YouTube is fetching that video and streaming that video here. Are you clear? This is query parameters, or we can say request parameters. For example, if you go to Google, go to our institute website, let me show you in our website how we are sending the data to server. I'm opening our website. So now, whenever you go to our website, if you click on view details, when you click on view details, what happened? Directly course name sent to the server. So Python full stack online training. So here there is no key, only value is available. Python full stack online training. So this is path parameter. Directly we are sending the value to the server in the URL. So query parameters are used to send the data to the server. Path parameters also used to send the data to the server. Query parameters will represent in the form of key value, whereas path parameters will represent the data directly. Query parameters will present only at the end of the URL. Path parameters can present anywhere in the URL. So to read the query parameters in the Spring controller, we will use request param annotation. To go for path parameters, to read path parameters in the Spring controller, we will use path variable annotation. The annotation that we are going to use to read the path parameters, that is path variable annotation. To read query parameters, we will use request param. To read path parameters, we will use path variable annotation. Sir, both are used to send the data to the server in the URL only. Then what is the difference between query parameters and path parameters? Generally, whenever you have a single result for the given key, for the given value, if you are having a single result, then you will go for the query parameter. With the given value, I can get multiple records as a response. Then we will go for path parameters. Are you guys getting my point? Unique record or multiple records. When you want to fetch a single unique record, then you will go for query parameters. When you want to fetch multiple records with the given value, then we are going for path parameters. So generally, when we are developing the web applications, then we will use the query parameters concept. But when we are developing the REST APIs, we are going to use the path parameters concept. Generally, to send the data from the UI to server, people will use query parameters. When we are developing REST APIs, so we are going to use path parameters to take the data from client to server. Once we develop one application, then practically we are going to understand what is query parameter, what is path parameter, how client will send the data to server in the URL, and how server will read the data from the URL. So when we need to go for request param annotation, when we need to go for path variable annotation, that we will understand practically with an example. Then you will get more clarity. Sirisha, you are not getting the web app folder. That means whenever you are creating a project, you need to select the project packaging type as a WAR file, not the jar file. If you select the project packaging type as a jar, web app folder will not be available. If you select a project packaging file, packaging type as a WAR, then web app folder will be created. Okay.
Sir, path variable and path param both are same.
Yeah, both are same, sir. Then some people will call it as a path parameters. Some people will call it as URI parameters. Some people will call it as a path variables. All are same.
Sir, while we are sending user ID and password, it will create some security issue, na? It will.
Whenever you are dealing with the security data, then you need to go for request body. So if your data is confidential, if your data is having some secret data, then we will go for request body. If your data is not confidential, then you can send by using query parameters or path parameters. So we are going to discuss get request, post request. So whenever you are sending a get request, you will send the data in the URL. Whenever you are sending a post request, you will send the data in the request body.
Sir, we are developing HTTP without security applications, na? Right now.
Sir, whatever security that you are saying, Spring security is different, HTTPS is different.
Okay, it is protocol based, right?
Yes. For HTTPS, we need to purchase the SSL certificate and we need to install that certificate. Then we will get the HTTPS.
Yes, sir. Sir, in servlet, we using web.xml to mapping that first controller, right, sir? First servlet.
Yeah, here it is not required.
So how
First,
it will handle?
Dispatcher servlet will be configured by default with the Spring Boot. That is auto configuration. Whenever you add web starter, by default Spring Boot will understand that dispatcher servlet should act as a front controller.
Okay.
You got it?
Yes, sir.
Spring web dependency will provide, sir.
Yep. So whenever you add the web starter, then it will provide the dispatcher servlet as a front controller. Yeah. Guys, query parameters, path parameters. So you clear it tomorrow with an example, then you will get more clarity. So if you have any questions, theoretically you can ask me. People are saying my voice is breaking. So there is a network issue here. Anybody having any questions theoretically?
Sir, do you have any video or idea on the IntelliJ, sir? Because I'm having IntelliJ, but exactly where I need to put that view files, the JSP or anything. Same web app under. Sir, not able to hear you. Your voice is breaking.
In the web app folder, you can create one folder and you can keep it.
Web app under SRC main.
Yeah, in the main web app folder will be available. In the web app folder, you can create one more folder and you can keep in that.
Okay. Sure, sir.
Yes, all of you able to develop first web application?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Complete.
Okay. So tomorrow
Yes,
we
sir.
will see the example on this query parameters and path parameters. We'll see the example, then you will get more clarity.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine guys. Thank you.